Welcome to Center Stage, the documentary podcast. Each week, our group of intrepid researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, looking for that one artist to take center stage. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one artist. Once that is settled, we invite that artist into Thunderlove Studio to chat with your hosts Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Center Stage is simple: to make sure the recorded work of artists remains, or in some cases lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
She melts my heart with an invitation. The smile calls me like an invocation. 'Cause we're satellites. We're satellites. Just you and me. Dancing around the debris.
Recently, Owen and Jeramy from the Seattle-based band New Age Healers stopped by Thunderlove Studio to chat with Jeff and me about their band's origins, their catalog, and the art of shoegazing. It was a fruitful dialogue, considering the genre is having a bit of a moment again. Stories were told, laughs were had, and bands were mentioned. Lots and lots of bands. So sharpen your pencils, you may want to take some notes. Their most recent release, The Spinout, remains firmly rooted in shoegaze, but we find the band stepping away from all their influences and creating a sonic landscape that is all their own, without coloring outside the lines of the shoegazing genre. So please sit down and make yourself comfortable. Here's our conversation with Owen and Jeramy from New Age Healers.
How on earth did you stumble upon us?
So confession time, friends. I think your band and my band probably self-identify with similar veins. My band, we describe ourselves as grunge gaze. Sure. So somewhere between that Seattle late 90s thing that happened and the UK shoegaze thing. So I probably have through, I don't know, either the Facebook Space Rockers Anonymous page or an Instagram page, or the number of degrees of Kevin Bacon between us really is fairly minimal. We recorded our last record with Matt Talbot from Hum, who I'm sure is somebody that you know.
Wow, very cool. What's the name of your band?
I play in the band Blip.
Blip, okay.
Yeah.
Noted.
Yeah. We'll exchange Bandcamp links after the show. And Jeramy, apologies. I've got some notes here, and I may go back in New Age Healers history prior to your involvement. I want to take us all the way back. And by the way, coming up on a decade of this project for you, Owen.
Yeah.
Starting with 2016. Now, if I'm reading this right, the 2016 New Age Healers record entitled Ghosts seems like it was just you. You're the only musician listed in the credits. Kind of gives the vibe of a bedroom project. Take us all the way back to that first record.
Well, sure. I can start. So I'd quit a job. I was working in Los Angeles and commuting from Seattle to Los Angeles. So I'd leave on a Monday and come back on a Friday. And after a while, I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I was frankly underemployed for a year. Keith, you're in New Haven. I still work for ESPN Quite a bit. So, and then I was working, half time with them. So, and in the process, I was also just rehabbing our house here in Seattle. And then, oddly enough, the station I now work at, KEXP, so I work for ESPN and KEXP. I was just listening as I was rehabbing our house, just doing, junk around the house, and a song by Band of Horses came on, and I always get the name of it wrong, but he essentially said, "I can sleep, a ghost." I think it's called "A Ghost in My House." Sorry.
Yeah. Is there a ghost?
Yeah, is there a ghost? Sorry, thank you. And the song is, I think, an incredible song, but it's also when you break it down, it's a really simple song. It may have only 2 chords, I'm not sure, but what it has is incredible dynamics, huge build, amazing vocals, and I just was, working on the ceiling of all things, listening to Cheryl Waters' show on KXP, thinking, well, fuck, I could probably do something like that, I could, and so I just grabbed my old guitar and turned on the laptop and fired up GarageBand for the first time ever, and just started, writing songs. A friend of mine named Ben Weasel, who's a lead singer of a pop punk band called Screeching Weasel, gave me a really great piece of advice, and he said that the interesting things, and this is just his opinion, but the interesting thing in songs is not wackadoo chord choices juxtaposed against each other in some bizarre way. When music becomes really interesting is when the sonic choices you make are weird or different or new or inspiring or whatever. And he essentially just gave me the advice, just follow the Ramones or Elvis Presley or rock and roll way of doing things. If you're starting in E, go to A, then go back to E, then go to B. That kind of stuff. There's a term for that. I don't know what it is. And I've sort of adhered to that for almost 10 years now, sort of. And then guys like Jeramy can hop in, and Jeramy's an incredible sound creator and do really amazing things on top of some fairly basic ideas that I create.
So this kind of springs from you as the originator. I want to move forward in the evolution of the band because it seems like there's a robust story arc here. Ghost was the first release, and then Where the Tragic Happens was 2017, the next year. This record sees you're listing a full band in the credits. You're now a 4-piece. And I think what I want to lean into and understand is you also cite there is a live Seattle band and a live Minneapolis band, and they're wildly different rosters.
Oh gosh, I hadn't talked about that forever. So the idea for this, based on my work with ESPN, I travel a lot, and so I end up having a lot of frequent flyer miles. And I had a vision where I could get friends from the New York area, because we lived there for almost 10, 12 years, friends from Minneapolis and friends in Seattle, and have 3 different bands. I would just travel to them and play those places, right? And I did it twice in Minneapolis, and it was a really great band. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the band Arkwalder, but one of the members of Arkwalder was in the band. Actually, the drummer Scott's wife, Kari, was also in the band. She's an incredible bass player. She's in the band called Annie and the Bang Bang, and various other people have been in lots of other bands. And so we played 2 shows, but it's just what I thought were really simple songs to learn are not simple songs to learn, because everyone has their own unique way of playing, and Jeramy can attest to this, that I'm quirky in how I play guitar and how I play things sometimes, and it's not always so easy to pick up. Right, Jeramy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the charm. You were like, oh, these things are really simple, right? And these songs are really simple. They're A, B, they're A, B. Well, yeah, I mean, kind of, but sometimes you're like, oh, yeah, but that A is like a third longer than the A that happened before it, right? Like, I just hear it that way. And so that's, I think, part of what makes what that guy said to you kind of wrong for you, right? It was right for you in that it unlocked you, right? But it was wrong for you because you still were like allowing yourself to, this one's going to be 14 seconds longer than the last time we did this A section, right? Yeah.
I guess it was the main thing was it was easier to sing from essentially going from A to D as opposed from going to A to, I don't know, C sharp or something like that. These things can be done. It was too hard. There was too much dissonance to battle against. And it made, I think in the end, I'm sort of a pop songwriter with a rock and shoegaze facade, right? But these are pop songs essentially. Because I like pop songs, and I'm not looking to be the next Genesis or Yes or King Gizzard and Lizard Wizard or whatever.
Well, there's something to be said for all of those bands, but I don't know that I would call it pop. I think there's a very so a lot of times we will play songs throughout the episode, and I'd love for us to take a listen to "He Took a Bullet to Heaven." A reviewer called it "failure divided by the square root of Jesus and Mary Chain," and I think that was
saw that. Yeah.
Pretty fitting, pretty spot on for the sound. You seem like someone very well versed in a lot of genres of music. You seem like you probably are familiar with a lot of the shoegaze era bands, and so Jesus and Mary Chain, Ride, maybe even Swerve Driver to some extent. Yes, that's all there, but it's not just that British thing happening. There's something American happening too with this record, where you get maybe like Richard Patrick from Filter, and maybe that's bass riff too, because the bass riff on that tune is fucking gnarly. But it's a great mishmash of all of those things, and I think coming from like that first record being mostly you to this being the full band, you start to hear like other people pushing you maybe different directions, some dynamics coming in. And then, the next record, Debris, is where, you start getting My Bloody Valentine, you start getting Stone Roses, you start getting little hints of Muse in there, lots of shit that it's like, okay, this is a band that's starting to really find its legs. And I'm so glad that you talked about Minneapolis. Let's lean into Minneapolis, because Minneapolis seems to be a city that just, if you grew up in that city, there are certain foundational bands that you just know, right? Husker Du and The Replacements. I think that city is a part of your sound just as much as Seattle is.
Well, I would hope so. I went to high school with Tommy Stinson, the bass player in The Replacements.
Oh, wait, you grew up in Minnesota?
I did.
I grew up in Minnesota as well. The first 12 years of my life.
Why are you following me over, Keith?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't help myself.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to you, Owen. I'm drawn.
Why? You're only human, brother. Why wouldn't you be?
That's cool.
Where in Minnesota?
Golden Valley.
The Golden Valley, of course.
Yep.
Yeah, my friends grew up right across the street from Rod Carew.
Oh, I could not say that.
Yeah, Tyrell Hills, I think is what it's called. It's just off of what was 12, now 394. Anyhow, so that's cool, Keith. And we'll have to talk more about that because I love talking about Minnesota. Yeah, I mean, for sure. To me, so like I said, high school with the lead singer, Soul Asylum, bass player from Replacements, Tommy Stinson, went to my same high school, although he only made it like till 10th grade, barely. Hey man, they were doing stuff. He had things to do, and it was going well. And kudos to them. They're an incredible band. Then Husker Du, and as you said, and there's other bands too. Like later on, I guess the second one. Well, there's a band called the Suburbs that were incredible. There was a AmRep had a huge footprint there. So you had Cows and Hammerhead. You had bands out of Fargo like Godhead Silo, who were buddies of mine. The noise rock thing was incredible. You had the band I've become friends with called Arc Welder. You had Rifle Sport, which was the most famous person there, Todd Trainer, who ended up playing in Shellac for 30 years. He's the drummer. And he also had his side project, Bricklayer Cake. And all these people were just around all the time. You could touch them. You could talk to them. It felt like you were walking in the midst of superheroes. I was a kid, and it just, I suppose it never left me. I don't know. I mean, I still love all that music and I'm still blown away by the musicianship. I think many of those people were unheralded and way before their time in some regard. Arc Welder in particular. Well, shit, Hammerhead as well. I mean, they're sort of like idols now. And that was 30 years ago. Yeah, so it was an incredible place to grow up. It was an incredible music education. I mean, for God's sakes, the funk too. I served ice cream to Prince when I was 16 years old. The time was around. I mean, and from that, there were smaller bands you never heard of that were just amazing. There's a band called Hot Sauce that used to do like Bad Brains covers. They were fucking incredible. I mean, it was, and it was an incredible place to grow up. Yeah, and I was blessed. And you name all these bands and stuff, and I'm so far on the periphery from the coolness that they were. I was just a dipshit, dreaming of being something like them, someday. And I ended up here.
You had to have been doing something right. By the time you recorded Debris, you were working with Barrett Jones, who, that's a guy whose resume, gee whiz. I mean, he's worked with the Foos, he's worked with Nirvana.
Sorry.
All right.
Did you ask a question about Barrett Jones?
Yeah, what was it? Tell me what it was like to work with Barrett Jones on that record.
Well, he's a gentleman and an artful lover, so that was wonderful. So just a clarification, the second album, Where the Tragic Happens, actually is all still me, I think. I don't think anyone else, I don't remember exactly, but I don't think anyone else played on it. Maybe they did. I don't recall. I mean, I recall sending just absolutely crap sounding tracks to a guy named James Aparicio, who was a really amazing producer, and he cleaned up a bunch of stuff and made it sound amazing. And he's the one he mixed our last record as well. But I think that's all me. And I'm really glad you have picked out songs that you enjoy. I think for any artist, I look back at those things and think, God, I wish I would have done this differently. I mean, fuck, I wish I would have had this band now making those songs, because the people in this band are just, besides being amazing players, are incredible people, with great ideas and fun to be around and all the stuff. So Debris, Barrett Jones. It was kind of the first time I'd really been in a studio in 20 plus years or something like that. And like you said, his resume precedes him in a really important way. He's a really great engineer with great ears who has really cool ideas in terms of harmonies and arrangements. He's a super nice guy, smart as hell. And we came in with songs that were pretty cooked. So just to go somewhere and get good sounds and create an album, make vinyl, share with people, and have songs come out of that were played quite a bit across the world. Like, for example, the song "Satellites" we still play live quite a bit, and that was a big hit then. Barrett's amazing.
Before we go any further, I want to ask you a question about the name of the band, New Age
God.
Healers, because I did a Google search trying to get in my path of doing research, and it sent me down.
Sorry.
There. Yeah, I blame you for that. It sent me down quite a rabbit hole.
Well, we are neither New Age nor healers.
But did you find a source of truth somewhere out there for you?
How could I not, Jeremy? How could I not? Yeah.
Good.
So good.
What? How did that come to be?
If I could, I'd rename us. I hate that. Sometimes I hate this name so much, but I think most bands feel that way. I imagine the Beatles like 10 minutes are like, oh, what have we done to ourselves? we're Beatles forever now. So I was just reading an article about I can't remember the guy's name now. He was a murderous thug in the Balkans who, killed thousands of people and then hid in plain sight for 15 years as a New Age healer. And just this idea, the juxtaposition of this murderous guy hiding as a New Age healer and using crystals to heal people after he'd actually led an army to kill thousands of people was extraordinary to me. So the juxtaposition of those two things was interesting. But it's a funny thing. Like I have a Google alert on it. Every week I get an email. It's never about the band. It's always about some weird Ricky healer who's written some goofy book about, I don't know, whatever nonsense they believe in,
All right, fair enough.
There we are.
Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry.
I have clarity. No, I have clarity now.
It's interesting that you bring up the notion of revisiting songs that you'd written earlier in your musical career, because, Jeremy becomes a part of New Age Healers. When did you join the band, Jeremy? The first release was the 2022 record, right?
Yeah, I think it was probably 6 months prior to that, right?
So Jeremy's project, or at least one of Jeremy's projects prior to this band, was Voyager 1. And one of the last things Voyager 1 did was to do a remix of a song that you'd recorded in, I think it's 2002. So some 20 years later, Wires 2023 comes out, kind of a reimagining of that tune. So and it is possible to go back in time and bring those recordings forward in a modern way.
It's not. Hey man, Voyager 1 is an incredible band. That song's amazing. The original version's amazing. That new one's amazing. I love them both. And Jeremy's an incredible musician and songwriter and artist, all the stuff.
It's very nice.
So to me, by the time Demolition Stories comes around, Jeremy bringing sort of that Voyager 1 experience into what was something that seems like you had a pretty good head of steam with in terms of the creative output. Those two worlds combined, and I think you start introducing. Well, first off, it's the first record that you list the musicians in the band. You cite yourself as a 6-piece, so now you've got synths and keys, and you've got additional guitar work in there. The sound is really becoming much more robust. Setting Sun is a fantastic example where listening to that song, you're like, is that like a Stevie Miller band kind of vibe going on with the synths? And the guitar work is really mature. So
you nailed it, man. It is.
It's Stevie Miller band is what you're shooting for.
It's Abracadabra 2022. Absolutely.
It's all Miller all the way down.
Yeah. It's the Pompatus of Love, baby. What's up?
And who could blame you?
funnily enough, that record was mastered by the guy who was Steve Miller's old live sound engineer.
Oh.
So there is a Miller connection. Perhaps a touch closer than anybody here knew.
A blind squirrel and a nut and all of that.
Yeah. Sorry, there was a question.
Take me back to you joining this group.
So I had been I did the shoegaze band, right? And it was fantastic and made lots of friends and had a lot of really cool experiences along the way. And then I did a chamber pop orchestra. There was accordions and violins and lap steel and people stomping and shouting. And it was very early 2000s with a dear friend of mine that I had worked with. I used to run a recording studio, and he was a kid when he came through. I recorded him and recognized him immediately as a great talent, Tomo Nakayama, who's now a solo artist. Anyway, I was in a band called Grand Holloway with him for a while, and it was cool. It was harder to play than shoegaze stuff, but it wasn't quite me. It wasn't 100% fit, And then I did an ambient record, mostly because the pandemic came around, and I was trying to figure out how to meditate, and I couldn't figure out how to meditate. I'm just crap at meditating. I'm I know, I'll just spend a week designing a reverb. Right. And so I did that. And then I was all right, now that I've got my reverb, I'm going to play one chord for 9 minutes. And so I just forced myself to meditate and try and lower my heart rate. Right. And it worked. But at the end of the day, it's also kind of boring. I love ambient music. I listen to it all the time. But as far as creating it, it's sort of not visceral. Right. Mm-hmm. And I call it, there's this experience that I have when I'm making loud music that I call blowing pant leg, which sounds kind of juvenile and ridiculous, but what it is, there's a science to it. It's physics, really. Your amplifiers are on the ground, right? And they're pointing probably not up. If you were smart, you'd point them up so you could hear them, but they're pointing sort of at your ankles, right? So when you hit that chord really hard, the speaker is moving so much air that it kind of ruffles the cloth in your pant leg. And there's this sort of thing that just runs all the way up my spine and scratches the top of my head and then goes back down to the bottom of my foot. And it could be a slightly out of tune chord, or it could be just right, and either way there's this visceral response to it. And I missed it dearly did I miss it. So I had been looking for people who, all my loud music compatriots had moved away or had families that were coming up and stuff like that. And I was I did too. I had a family, and but my kid was just now old enough, and I was I got to get back to blowing pant leg. I gotta find a home for this itch, because I get a little tiny bit crabby when I can't scratch it. You guys probably know. Probably everybody in this call knows that feeling, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so there was a Facebook ad of all things, and it was shoegaze band seeks guitar player, and it was forwarded by a friend of mine who I used to be in a band with, and I immediately hit him up, and I was what's the deal? These people crazy? And he's only 20%. You can probably handle it. And then they went into just enough detail, and I was all right, I've been warned. But either way, I fired off hey, here's a quick little resume, and let's hop on a call. And so the rest was kind of a nerve-wracking. I'd never auditioned for a band before. I'd always made bands and then found people to do them. And so this was a full-on audition. I learned the songs and brought the stuff in, and nice to meet you, and looked around the room, and then 1, 2, 3, 4,
And stuck the landing. Oh my God.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Well,
he's still here.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true. We walked out to the parking lot afterwards, and you were all right, you're hired. When can you start? And I'm don't you want to the whole band is there, I'm don't you want to talk amongst yourselves?
The answer is
show
no.
Hands or whatever.
No. And here's why. Here's why. Okay, because we had already auditioned, 5 or 6 guitar players, and very nice people, but they just didn't get the vibe. And it's another thing. I didn't realize that the vibe was a thing that was hard to get. Mm-hmm. You sort of get it or you don't. Yeah.
You try and force it in. You're oh, I get enough of it, so now I'm going to force it into a corner that works with what I know. I could see people doing that too, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm very grateful that you elaborated on the definition of blowing pant leg, because
I admit it's ridiculous, but we all know that feeling, whether you play guitar or whatever.
He's got a bunch of little terms like that. If he doesn't like the sound of a snare, he calls it tubby.
Yeah, they can get tubby sometimes.
What's some other ones you got, Jeremy?
I don't know. Don't talk. I don't want to start talking about cymbals because I know it upsets everybody. But
cymbals eat guitars. Cymbals eat
guitars. It's true. They do eat guitars.
Cymbals make rock.
I know. I'm aware. But
Fair enough.
That record, and I mentioned Setting Sun, but I'd also like to talk about the song Scars. I wonder what extent that song and that type of song is, Jeremy, you coming in and saying, I want to blow pant leg. I want to have some riffs that are really going to blow people's face back a little bit. Because that song, to me, that's the first time you start to hear what I would call arena-sized riffs in this band. Like it starts to get pretty big.
What's interesting about actually that record kind of at large is that I was only sort of 25% allowing or coming into creative process, right? As far as writing riffs. So on Scars is a good example. Like the stuff you hear in the background, it's kind of the crispy stereo pan, like delay, sort of ambient-y things. That's me. But the main riff to that's all Owen. And to his credit, the thing I skipped over when I was talking about, and then I went up and auditioned, I only did that. I answered the ad, but then I listened to the songs and I was like, oh, these are all great, right? They could use a little nudge, right?
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for hearing the demo of Scars and others, right? And all that already being there, it's just at the surface, you just had to kind of splash a little water on them to buff them out a little bit. Yeah, that's Owen. That's his brain. Those riffs are his. He's the riff machine, really.
But the thing I'll add that is Jeremy's value to me, besides the good looks, and the great sense of humor and the lingering hugs.
Suddenly just got weird.
So yeah, weird. This ain't weird, brother. You just wait. No, but he mixed and produced the album essentially, and co-engineered it as well. And there's a reason. If you were to go back and listen to the previous albums, I'm probably off key a little bit or flat sometimes. And he's kept me on target. There's. It's an elevation of the art form because of him, and because of the rest of the band as well. But Jeremy's key in that, and then also Jeremy's someone that I can just bounce ideas off and say, "What do you think of this?" And he'll say that's dog shit, or that's partial dog shit, or dear God, don't bother me anymore, or stop calling me, or are you outside my window right now? And then once in a while he'll like a song. No, he's a really good partner to write songs with. And just to skip way ahead here, we're about to start working on a new album, and Jeremy's bringing fairly completed songs that he allows me to sing on top of, to our next album, and it's just an absolute fucking gas. They're cool as shit. They're great ideas. They're fun to sing over. They're interesting. They're not how I would write songs, which is also really interesting to me. So it's becoming more of a thing, in a really interesting, vibrant, inspiring, fun way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun right now. We're in a good spot, I think, creatively. There's some really cool shit going on. And honestly, much like the last record, we have too many songs, which is like, I've never been in a band where it's like, okay, we've got 25.
I just finished.
We don't have time.
Actually.
Of course you did. Of course you did. We have 25 songs, and we don't have the time or we can't. We're just, we can't do all that. Like, we're not doing double records right now, double albums.
Well, let's be fair. There's not a rule that says you can't.
Well, there's time and life and jobs.
Time and life,
and expectations for ourselves for. I would say in the last few records, there's a couple songs that probably shouldn't have gotten in the last few records because they just weren't ready. We forced them. I'm not going to say what they are, unless you pay me. I wish there's a few that I wish we could have buffed up a little more.
If Jeramy was starting to introduce his influence on Demolition Stories, I feel like the Spin Out is where you can see some comfort, where his confidence in his role in the band, and it's whereas the previous record listed as a 6-piece, here you scale it back to a 5-piece. The title track to me on the Spin Out seems like it was the lead single. Am I right on that?
It wasn't actually.
No? Okay.
No.
What was the first single?
It was
I think it was, and then we did.
I thought it was All Wrapped Up was the first single.
Wrapped Up was the second one.
I don't think that's. Well, it doesn't matter. Whatever.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, the Spin Out was the first single. Of course it was. We were geniuses.
There we go.
We knew right away.
We named the record after it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think there'd been a lot of in previous efforts. There was that kind of British vibe where you were getting a lot of that early mid 90s ride shoegaze thing. Here, I start getting again a little more America with like Black Rebel Motorcycle Club, maybe a little Interpol in there. The shoegaze is still very much there, and I have to tell you, I laughed so hard as I was reading the liner notes on the Bandcamp page, and I saw you refer to yourselves as hashtag shoegaze, the combination of shoegaze and fugazi. I think that's really funny. But that post-punk thing that you're talking about with like the arc welder and some of the AmRep influence is definitely there. I think to me, the Spin Out is New Age Healers realizing its full potential. Like, this is a band in full blossom. Not a bad track on the record. It really it slaps from start to finish. So share with us some, there's some videos that people can enjoy. There's, as we said, the title track is fantastic, but I also really, really like Dying Moon. And I would also suggest, because I think all four of us on the podcast today are headphones people, may I suggest to anyone listening to this episode, do yourself a favor, listen to this record with a nice set of headphones, because there's a lot in the stereo field that you really get with a great set of cans that you just miss when you're listening, maybe on in your car or on a normal device. This is a headphone record. It's got that richness to it. And I'm talking too much. Tell me about the spin out.
I throw it to Jeremy.
Yeah, I'd say the headphone part of what you're talking about is not accidental. Like, that's entirely. I think we agree. I think we have kind of agreed with every record that he and I had made together. The next thing we're going to make is the best thing we've ever done, and I think we'll always sort of go into anything with that baseline understanding, right? It's not always easy to hit, but I think that's the aspiration. So. Certainly from a fidelity, I used to run a recording studio. I'm a professional audio person, for a living, and my foundation 40 hours a week is make things sound as good as they can possibly sound. And so it kind of drives him crazy sometimes, because I'm going to be like, no, that's the wrong, distortion pedal or whatever. And he's like, I don't know, it's just distortion. Grape ape, This is like, well,
me like this pedal.
Smash, Hulk smash. It's like, there's different kinds of distortion. And forget it. Just push that one. Push the purple one or whatever.
I'm good about doing what you suggest.
So therein lies, you get the Oscar and Felix, right? And somewhere in the middle lies the right thing to do, right? And so this record was intentionally. Let's see what fidelity, higher fidelity does for us. Let's see is it worth the time to slow down our process a little bit to see what the results were like, And sometimes we were a little too slow in the studio for my taste, but we got there, right? And I think with James Aparicio's help, the mixer, especially, it really hit a benchmark that we had yet to hit together. And I think to great result, right? And I think that's the goal then for the next one, is to kind of outdo it a bit more. But 100%, where I come from is throw 12 guitar tracks on there, and you only hear one of them for 4 seconds in the last half of a verse. Great. Let's do that. Because then the next time the person comes back to, let's say we get a person who listens to our song more than once. Let's say they listen all the way through. Fantastic. Let's say they listen more than once. Even more fantastic. And then they get to that second half of that third verse or whatever, and they're like, oh, I've never heard that before. That's the first time I heard that. I love that stuff about records. I was listening to Kashmir on the drive. I just went skiing last weekend on the drive. Kashmir is my skiing song. Drive down the mountain, you listen to Kashmir. You got to, right? That's how you get down the mountain safely. And for whatever reason, I was driving a different car, and the EQ of the speakers, and there's a new guitar part in Kashmir that I'd never heard before out of the left speaker. And I'm like, I've listened to this song for 40 years, and I've never heard that guitar part. You know what I mean? So yeah, by all means, let's keep doing that. It's fun. It's just fun. It's like little Easter eggs. You're hiding around the yard for people. I love that kind of stuff.
And that's probably, I would argue that's Led Zeppelin's best song. And that's really fucking saying something, because they got 50 amazing songs, right? Just as a side note, go watch their performance 2006 with the Queen something or other, when it's Jason Bonham on drums and the three of them get together. Oh my God, the version of Kashmir there, because the fidelity is stronger, is outrageously great. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But this is also the kind of statement you make in bars that starts fights, right? Highly subjective claim.
It's hard to say best and Zeppelin in the same. It's true.
Yeah.
I did see the new IMAX documentary, or the new documentary at IMAX Theater yesterday.
Was it good?
And I took my 14-year-old, and he was sitting there next to me, and he's like smacking me, and he's like, when they went to Atlantic Records, and I'm like, I am the best dad ever. I totally win at dadding because my 14-year-old knows about the transition when they went to Atlanta. Anyway, you get the idea. I was very excited.
I do. My 13-year-old's first concert was Baby Metal, and she gets to take that to her grave.
I don't even know what that is. Don't tell me.
Baby Metal opening for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So,
wow.
Oh,
that's a lot.
Give it away now, brother.
I tell you. Owen, you have ready access through your job to one of the coolest people in all of music, I think. And your band got to perform on KEXP with Cheryl Waters. Share with us a Cheryl Waters story, if you will.
Well, first of all, who is Cheryl Waters? For those of us who don't know,
Cheryl.
Oh, I can do it.
No, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I work at KXP. It's an internationally known, publicly funded, non-commercial music station out of Seattle, Washington. We have, I don't know, between streaming and terrestrial audience, it's probably 1 million a month listening. And then you've got a YouTube channel that has 3.5 million subscribers. 2 billion views. I'm pulling these numbers on my butt a little bit because I haven't updated them in my head for a while. But it's a really interesting, cool, amazing, artistic place. And Cheryl hosts the midday show and also does much of our in-studio sessions, and she's become internationally famous because of that. So, for example, we did the host I work with, John Richards, made up a holiday called International Clash Day in 2013, and it's become a really huge thing. It's our most listened to day of the year usually. And we celebrate the Clash, who we both love. And we took it to London in 2019 and invited a bunch of bands to stop by and play live on KXP. And we videotaped it. If you go to the YouTube channel, you can see these things. Idols played live, Snapped Ankles, Hiroshka with Mickey from Lush played, on and on and on. And so me and Cheryl and other folks like me who are behind the scenes and people would know are on the tube going from somewhere to somewhere else, probably Cock Fosters, because it seems like everywhere it's the Cock Fosters. And these students, probably 16, 17 years old, get on the tube. They got their school uniforms on with the blazers, and they're carrying tubas and trumpets or whatever. And they get on and they look up and they see her and they go, "Oi, are you Cheryl was?" It blew my head off. I couldn't believe that we were 3,000 miles away, however far it is from London to Seattle, right? And these people knew her. I laughed out loud. I couldn't believe, and she's of course gracious and wonderful. Yeah, so we got to, and I think it's 2019 we did it in studio. Yeah, and I'm of two minds. One, I wish I would perform better, if I'm being honest, but and I know that I know that how I write songs now in the band that we have now, I would perform better if we did it again. But yeah, the experience is incredible. And it's a badge of honor to say that you were invited to do in studio on KEXP. And, granted I work there, but it almost in some ways makes it more difficult because there's roadblocks up there where people don't want to give me favoritism, and rightfully so. I don't think they should. But the DJs we put bands on those in studios if we're playing their music, and our record was doing very well, and so they put us on. And hopefully we'll get to play again. And Jeremy, you've done in studios with Grant Hallway, haven't you?
Oh, and Voyager 1 and St. Kilda, a bunch. But to Cheryl, actually, she is one of the main reasons that Voyager 1 kind of kicked off, right? And we had made, back when it was called KCMU, not KXP, and it was in the basement of the meteorology building at the University of Washington. We sent a cassette, Peter Marchesi, who was the other half of Voyager 1, the band I was in. We sent a cassette that we made in our practice space to KCMU, thinking there's no way they're going to play it. And somebody calls us and they're like, "Your song is on the radio right now." And we turned it on, we dialed it on, and she was like, "I've been dancing around." She was like, she was talking about how she was dancing around the studio to this shitty demo. I mean, it was a good song, but it was a really bad recording of this thing we did in our practice space. We didn't know what we were doing. wasn't even on a computer. It was on like a Fostex 4-track, you know. Like
How's that possible?
Way back, I know, right? How did they even do that? Caveman style.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I emailed her to thank her. My email address was peanut@u.washington.
Oh, that's why.
That's why. So this is back when you could get email addresses without numbers after them, right? Because no one had thought of the word peanut before, University of Washington. I was a student there. So to this day, she calls me Peanut every time she sees me in the hallway. So we have a history that goes back to 1998. Old Cheryl Waters and I.
I love that.
She calls me Meowin, so Meow and Owen.
That's nice.
It's something.
It's not nothing.
It's not nothing. That's right.
I love the thought that just got filtered mid-sentence there. It's not...
Oh, I might have made it up. That's the worst part. It's so stupid. It's my fault.
Is this shoegaze thing that is happening in modern music? It is grunge gaze I've heard tossed around, new gaze. It's kind of a new, heavier, borderline goth, I think, moment that's happening with the genre. Do you feel like you're a part of that? Are there a group of bands you identify with that are active?
Wow. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, we're friends with a lot of bands, but I mean, we're in an odd position. That's a really hard question for me to answer. Jeremy, I could go, but do you have an answer?
What's interesting to me about it, like when we did it in 98 with Voyager 1, like nobody really cared. They were just sort of like, yeah, that was nice. I kind of remember that too. And they wanted to move on to other things. And I love that, like a friend of mine just went and saw Slowdive 3 times in Canada. Like, flew to Canada and watched him 3 times. And he was like, he was my age, and he was like, I was the oldest one at every single one of those shows, with a handful of other people, with the exception of a handful of them. So there's this resurgence of like I gave my teenage neighbor a ride to school the other day with my kid, and and we're driving to school, and I had a Slowdive t-shirt on from like when I saw them in like, I don't know, 92 or something, and she was like, oh, I love them. I was like, what is going on? Like, really? What is going on? I love this. Like,
it's like me looking at my dad's friends and go, man, it's so fucking good. Bing Crosby. No, Bing Crosby.
Oh, Bing Crosby even worse.
30 years ago. Yeah.
Totally. So there's a thing, like it's a thing. Like I don't know what happened. Like somehow it's like resonating with people again. And I think there's like, to what you call out, there's the heavy side, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's also this whole like dream pop side, which I think is maybe even bigger. And that's like the Beach House and like these other bands. I mean, dozens of them. They're doing a really great job. Even like Slow Pulp or whatever, where like if you aren't like attuned to it, you're like, oh, that vocal cadence is really like shoegaze. But if you just listen to the band, you're like, no, it's just kind of really awesome, like Neil Young songs with like some breathy vocals, right? You know what I mean? But there's like these elements people are pulling out of these awesome references. Yeah. But now it's like it almost just doesn't need the label anymore. It's just sort of like it's part of indie. It's part of just like bedroom. It's like there's this word lo-fi, which is also isn't actually low fidelity. It just means like you're up on the mic kind of whispering, So anyway, that I think like it's everywhere now. Like it just seems to be sort of even like some Taylor Swift. If you listen to like some Taylor Swift songs, you're just like, oh, that's like a shoegaze like kind of production.
Now, hang on.
No,
absolutely. She's been looking with the guys from
Jack Antonoff. And Jack Antonoff, some of the stuff he does, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. And like if you listen to like early National stuff, it's totally shoegaze influenced. Mm-hmm. And here's this is the thing. Like I'm sort of anti-genre. So I love shoegaze. I love, because what happens when shoegaze is great to me, all these melodies and reverb and distortion all kind of cascade against each other and create new interesting sonics. Sing My Bloody Valentine live. That's that certainly was only Shallow I was hearing, but my God, I was hearing 3 other songs in the same song. And the other thing is, it strikes me is that I liked Husker Du and Dinosaur Jr. and Ride and numerous bands from late 80s, early 90s, Mission of Burma. and Sonic Youth, and I thought they're all kind of Swerve Driver. I thought they're kind of the same bands, sort of same ideas, right? I didn't know that we start segmenting these bands into certain things, and it strikes me as silly. Like I would argue, "Gigantic" by Pixies is kind of a shoegaze song,
I mean, Hum's a great example. We talked about Hum earlier.
I mean, their last record is totally amazing. Like Helmet meets, I don't know, but huge riffs and gigantic sounds. Total rock, total Zeppelin, right?
Yeah.
But under the shoegaze umbrella, I guess.
Maybe. Who knows what that umbrella looks like anymore?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's kind of the point, is that it's broadening. I mean, there are kids now that would refer to the Deftones as a shoegaze band.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I think they were. I mean, I remember I interviewed them like when their first or second record came out. My first question was, "What the fuck is this?" And I meant it in a really good way, because it was such an interesting juxtaposition of kind of sort of metal and huge sounds with kind of, to my way of thinking, Chino sounded like he was he was mostly influenced by Morrissey. And I thought they were really interesting, and I still think they're interesting. I don't know their later stuff that well, but I do know that I really enjoyed them when they first came out.
You might identify with this. One of the criticisms of my band has been, how British does this guy think he is? It's like Morrissey singing for Hum. And I'm like, that's one of the greatest compliments you could give us. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But because of those influences, because, and you could go on and on, Catherine Wheel, Swerve Driver, Ride, there was so much coming out of Charlatans UK. So much came out of the UK in that moment that it was like, it did get associated with as a British sound. I think even to some extent Blur fits in that group. And it's I think, Owen, to your point, it's all rock and roll in its guts, right? It's all, it all finds its roots in the blues somehow, going back to 12 bar and a beat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about the artists that I mentioned earlier, Ride and My Bloody Valentine and Dinosaur Jr. And Husker Du and so on and so on. All these bands were pushing sonics. They were, think about like I think it's Little Furry Things. I mean, like Jay Mascis is using the wah-wah pedal and multiple distortions in a really interesting way and overwhelming the mix with that sound in a way that sort of changes music in a great way. And then he and Kevin Shields become friends, and they're probably influencing each other with the choices they're making. Bob Mould was a huge My Bloody Valentine fan. I think I'm trying to blank. What's their most famous album?
Copper Blue.
No, I'm sorry. My Bloody Valentine.
Loveless.
Oh, Loveless.
Yes, I think that's his favorite album of all time. It certainly was 20 years ago. And I'd be talking about my answer, but I know he loves it, right? And like Ride was for sure. I mean, they were absolutely pushing distortion and reverb to places that had never gone before. And I think they're all kind of the same. I don't think it was a British sound. I don't think it was an American sound. I think it was just a sound. Probably built around what the Jesus and Mary chain had started in the Cocteau Twins, probably. And then you can go further. You can say like, then the Stooges started that, and Velvet Underground, and it goes on and on, right? So,
but I think like what one of the things that it has in common with, and Jeff, you mentioned earlier on like grunge, right? And maybe there's some overlap, but I went to I was a huge Anglophile, huge like shoegaze fan, and like Joy Division all the way back, and like Jam and stuff. And I went to Europe for the first time. Took myself to Europe with a little tiny backpack in 1997. I got to London the week that Paranoid Android came out, and Bittersweet Symphony.
Oh my gosh!
And like that was the city, right? That was what it was like, and it was like middle of summer, and it was raining and dark. And all the buildings had like a 1/4 inch of dirt on them, just like all the and I was like, oh fuck, I get it. Like I get why all the shit I love comes from here. Like how does why is it not coming from Indonesia or like Australia or like wherever? It's like, oh, because it's similar to some of the things some of the ways I feel, some of the things I love about where I grew up in the Pacific Northwest. There's this darkness and this sort of introspection, and like things are dark. You're not surfing. There's no surf vibe. There's no beach party vibe. This is not reggae, which I love very much. This is not that vibe. This is not coming from Southern California where everything's going to be all right. And we're just like kind of bopping around. Like there's a darkness descending. It has descended and it's been here for hundreds of years, really. Right. And so maybe there's a crossover there, like sort of even just down to the weather, right? You can track this stuff, right?
Well, and I would think there's a thread between Minneapolis and London and Seattle. You know, we were all kids jamming in our basements, right? Or, you know, in the middle of winter. I mean, like, good Lord, it was minus 14 today in Minneapolis.
Yeah. What are you gonna do today? Stay inside.
Yeah, stay inside. And I just bought a guitar and a crappy amp, and here we go. This conversation got me thinking about like the sounds I was hearing that still influence me to this day that I heard 35 years ago. I mean, like, so for example, we talk about grunge gaze, right? Well, shit, go back and listen to a song by Soundgarden called Flower. It's the first song that grabbed me by the lapel and said, holy fuck, this is an amazing band. It's some odd time signature. It's totally reverbed out. The guitars are distorted and reverbed. And Chris Cornell's vocals are buried, right? It's an SST release. And it's a precursor to their kind of more straightforward rock, and they were never really straightforward. But it's absolutely to my way of thinking, in the same vein as all the bands Ride and My Bloody Valentine and Dinosaur Jr. and Lush and Cocteau Twins. It's for sure influenced by all of those guys. And shit, Kim Thile, the guitar player who wrote the song, was a DJ at KCMU/KXP back in the day. Influenced by a trillion things, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you do exhibit that borderline encyclopedic knowledge where you can go back 35, 40 years and go, I can tell you the first time I heard a specific guitar tone and how that led me to be the musician I am today. But I think a lot of bands, a lot of musicians, you get into it and you start off playing those songs that you love. You know, you think about when you picked up a guitar, what's the first thing I learned? Well, maybe it was Kashmir, you know, maybe it was, who knows, but eventually you stop sounding like your influences and you start sounding like you. And I think New Age Healers is absolutely a band that has reached that escape velocity. You have stopped sounding like your influences and started sounding like you.
That might be the greatest compliment I've ever received in this band. Jeff, thank you. That is the nicest thing. Wow. You know what? We're done. Time to break up the band, brother.
Drop the mic.
Yeah, that's very nice.
My work here is done.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, asshole.
I wish I could say that this is the first band that our podcast has broken up, but I kid. No, it's so, you know, I will end on one last song, which is Spark Up. I think you talked about performing with a member of Arc Welder. I think that Arc Welder, maybe Jawbox, J. Robbins kind of thing influence is seeping in there with a lot of post-punk vibes. I really like it. I hope that, and as somebody who cites, you know, Hum and Failure and Swerve Driver and those space rock bands as their favorites, you fit into a small but elite circle of things that just push my buttons. So I'm very happy to hear that you're excited about what comes next, that there's going to be more, that there's no signs of slowing down, and the velocity of the band is healthy and great, and that you guys are enjoying one another creatively. That's really exciting because it's my thing, man. I want more of it.
Well, that's very kind of. I'll just tell you something quickly about the song. The song, and I kind of wish he wouldn't have changed the name. Actually, the song was supposed to be called "Shoegaze." We called it "Shoegaze" forever. And if there's a Fugazi song that uses the same kind of guitar picking. It's muted double time 16th note guitar picking, right? I don't remember which album it's off of. At the same time, I'm into back in the day into Ride and Dinosaur Jr. I mean, huge into Fugazi, right? I don't see how you couldn't be, And so for sure, like bands like them and Bad Brains, and I don't know. I'm drawing a blank on other bands that were like kind of more Kiss influence, sort of. I guess I don't know. It's the Stooges influence. Absolutely are infused in what we do. We're lucky to stand on their shoulders. And they, did amazing things that lifted so many bands up, and we're lucky to get one tiny sliver of it. It's an honor. But that song is for sure influenced by those bands. I don't know if Jeremy, if you have any thoughts on the song.
No, I mean, just that, like the sort of percussive, like let the guitar move the song forward was absolutely the call of the day for that one. Like, let's just get out of the way and let the guitar push everything forward. So in that very much American, like a nod to America. Like, I don't think a lot of British shoegaze bands really did that as much. Right?
Well, okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is how I think we're trying to like move the genre forward in some regard by bringing different influences into it that you wouldn't normally hear.
Yeah.
I think we're more comfortable now, sort of allowing ourselves to exist there, Like, we're talking to a new record producer for the next record, and one of the things we were talking about is like, let's see how far we can get with clean guitar sounds. Like, how nasty and like gnarly and like kind of tense can we make the space with the cleanest guitar sound possible?
Well, sure. And if you listen to
feel psychedelic.
Yeah, right? you listen to Loveless My Bloody Valentine, those guitar tones are pretty clean.
Some of them are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then some of them are not. Thank you, Kevin Shields, for spawning an entire industry of cottage and boutique stomp box makers.
Right.
Which I'm sure we could do a whole episode. I'm sure just the three of us nerding out about stomp box.
Yes, you could.
Stuff,
I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah,
no doubt in my mind.
We got the stuff.
You guys are working on a new record now, correct?
Yeah. Demos are done, although I'm still writing stuff because, like, what else am I gonna do, right? Yeah. And Jeremy, hey, don't you laugh, Jeremy? You've brought new stuff to the table recently as well.
I know.
Yeah. So
Christmas break.
Best songs win, right?
That's right.
So yeah, and we're working with a really great producer. Hopefully, we're solid, right? We're doing this right.
Seems like it. We're like talking about dates, and we got things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we are.
This person's amazing, and we'd be lucky to work with them, and at a great studio, and but more importantly, we'd be lucky.
But too early to name them in a podcast. You don't want to jinx it.
I don't know. I don't think it matters. Whatever.
Okay, sure. His name's John Goodmanson. Like, he's a Seattle guy who's worked with Slater Kinney and Blonde Redhead. I mean, the list goes on. I think his first major recording was actually Nirvana at like a radio show a live radio show in Olympia back in the day. What's the college in Olympia that everyone went to? I can't remember. Evergreen, right? Yeah, I think he was on. It was Chaos Radio, KAOS. I'm pretty sure. And if you just look up John Goodmanson, you just be like, "Holy fuck, this guy has just."
Made Surf and Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah, it's Looney Tunes.
Yeah,
so many amazing songs and albums that he has his hand on. My favorite Slater Kinney album, he's in there, influencing them in really interesting ways. So oh God, I hope we didn't jinx this. Thanks, Jeremy.
I know, right?
It's committed
and a nice fella to boot. Yeah, and a nice fella to boot.
Our next record will be produced by Chatbot GPT. Coming to you from Chatbot GPT. No,
Mutt Lang.
Yeah, he's going to be fun to work with. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And Jeremy, I have to give you a shout out for giving a name check to Grape Ape.
Yes, Grape Ape.
I can't remember the last time anyone's name checked Grape Ape.
Sure. Yeah, I go deep. Me and Grape Ape go deep.
Yeah.
This was a deep.
Wonder Twin powers
You
activate,
should see
brother.
my back tattoo of the ape. Yes, it's 2 by 3 feet. Yes.
It's a tramp stamp. Let's be honest.
Because everybody wants to look at Grape Ape in their delicate moments. Yes.
Why wouldn't they?
This has been great.
Yeah.
Really been great.
New Age Healers. Owen, Jeremy, thank you for spending an hour with us. This was really fun.
Thanks for having us.
Total honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. We'll let you know when everything's ready to publish and you can share it with your homies.
Oh, it'll go up Wednesday.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, in a couple days.
2 days from now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Very good.
Quick turnaround. All right.
Yeah.
Continued success, guys. Thanks for the music.
Cheers. Hey, and Jeff, will you send us some Blip stuff?
I will. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
All right.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. I'm going to end.
Bye.
Many thanks to Owen and Jeremy for stopping by Thunder Love Studios to chat with Keith and Jeff.
This episode of Centre Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. The show was recorded at Thunder Love Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. You heard the following songs by New Age Healers during this podcast: Satellites, He Took a Bullet to Heaven, Setting Sun, Scars, The Spin Out, and lastly, you heard Spark Up. You can stream New Age Healers wherever you stream your favorite music, and be sure to check out our show notes for a link to their Bandcamp page. Please support independent music.
original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Farina Bella,
S.W. Loudon,
Michael Janicki, Peyton Janicki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Lucas Thunderlove.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.